Before we get in the program, Holly, it's time for this week's Joke of the Week.
Dun-dun. What do trees drink?
What do trees drink?
Root beer.
This week's joke is brought to you by Rescue.com.
Dun-dun. The week's garden joke is brought to you by Rescue.com. American-made rescue products keep your family home and yard protected from pest insects like wasps, hornets, yellow jackets, fire ants, flies, and more. Learn more at Rescue.com. That's RESCUE.com.
Rescue.com. Well, many people each year about this time decide for themselves that they want to can. They want to put up some of the stuff in which you're growing or purchase at a farmer's market so they have some canned goods. However, you do a presentation locally on the knowing about canning and what you need to do to make sure it's safe. There's a lot of people and there's a lot of places online that give you very horrible and unsafe practicing methods in order to preserve what you're growing. Whether intentional or not intentional, it's bad information. We're going to set you straight so you have the right information and the right sources to go to in order to successfully can what you grow or purchase for storage over winter.
Yeah, so you want to have a trusted recipe. And so when I say that, I mean something that is within the past like 10, 15 years or so. And then also that comes from a reliable source. So you might have, this is my great-great-great-grandmother's tomato whatever recipe, and it probably is safe, but maybe you do want to find a comparable recipe, which you can do so. There's many different safe resources. There's bulkcanning.com. There is a lot of times you can find master canners will have websites, like there's one out of
Bay Area.
Yeah, California, SB, like Sam Barbie.com or canning.com. And then there's also like Taste of Home. There's Better Homes and Gardens. There's also a woman out of Pennsylvania, and she is under the name Food in Jars. And I believe she's a master canner. But she definitely has safe recipes. So, and you might go to your library and find these old cool canning books from like the 70s, and you want to make sure that you bump it up to at least probably the early 2000s at this point. So make sure you have a trusted recipe. The other thing is you want to make sure you have equipment. Now, you don't need to go and buy all the canning equipment. You can get started for very minimal, especially if you just want to give it a try with a couple pint jars. But what you do need is very helpful is a little canning toolkit. This is helpful because it comes with a headspace measure. It comes with a canning funnel, a jar lifter, and a little magnetic wand thing. And this is usually less than $10. And even if you don't can for long or can often, you can always have those tools around. We use the canning funnel for various things. It's just helpful. Like I have this glass jar that I keep my coffee in, and I just use that to fill it up. So it's very handy. So that's helpful to have that equipment. And then if you need something to process your jars in, you don't necessarily have to buy a canner. If you have a deep stock pot and you're just doing some pint jars, you can put some sort of maybe some old butter knives at the bottom. You need something that's going to give you space between the bottom of the pot to the bottom of the jars. So yeah, you can, and as long as you have a lid, you're good to go. So there's that, and obviously jars, and you can find those a lot of places. Then
yard sales, Craigslist. Back in the day, marketplace. Back in the day, you would get a good deal on canning jars, like $0.25 a jar, and now I think they're probably like $1 a jar now. But we would always go and buy everything that they had. If they had 50 jars, we would buy 50 jars, whether all of them were good or not. How much for everything? And the person that was selling would always have the same response. You want to buy all of them?
And I just want you to heed caution. Make sure that if you are meeting somebody to buy these jars, meet them in a public place. I mean, I'm not saying that
bad things happen.
Yeah, I'm just saying, just be careful. So, I just wanted to be clear about that. Or bring more than one. Just don't go by yourself. Whether you're a male or female, numbers is power.
if you're going to go to somebody's residence to pick up jars. We've done that. This was years ago. We went to a lady's house, and she had them in the garage, and we both went together. So it was less creepy, I guess. Yeah. Long time ago. You don't remember this.
No.
You were there, though. It's less creepy than a man going to a woman's house or an older lady's house.
Yeah.
Or, it's safer all the way around.
Right. So the other thing you want to do is read the recipe. So you might think, well, I read the recipe, but did you read it? Like, did you just glance at it? Because some of these recipes, especially for certain types of pickle type vegetables, relishes, you have to let stuff soak for sometimes 3 hours, sometimes overnight. So you might be like, okay, today's Sunday, I'm going to can this stuff real quick in the morning, and then I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do in the afternoon. And all of a sudden you read your recipe, and now you're canning at 9 p.m. at night. So you want to make sure that you read the recipe, and also because you want to make sure you have the right ingredients on hand. You might think, I need this type of salt or sugar or vinegar or something, and you don't. Or you might think, okay, yeah, I definitely have like a spare bottle of vinegar, and then you go and you realize that no, that spare bottle was the one that you just used.
And some of these, like lemon juice, just because it's lemon juice, they have expiration. Not necessarily it's best buy and no good after. This is a science. You need to have fresh produce. You need to have up-to-date ingredients: apple cider vinegar, lemon juice, sugar, flour. The newest you can, the best you have, because this, again, is a science. And if you have aged stuff, it's not going to do the best result and can cause issues down the road with the food doing sciencey things in the jar because of reactions, because of age of ingredients.
Absolutely. Another thing is you want to make sure that everything you have is clean. If you think about it, you are putting food into jars to be stored at room temperature. So you don't want any sort of cross-contamination. And also just make sure that you're not using metal, like stirring utensils, whatever, cooking utensils to can with. You want to make sure you use wood, plastic, or that like silicone.
Rubberish silicone stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Metal can cause a reaction to the produce in the canning process. And then when you are going to start filling the jars to put them in the canner, you want to work swiftly. Something like tomatoes, if tomatoes get like over processed by a few minutes, that's not going to hurt anything. But jelly can be sensitive to that.
This is not a run the clock out situation.
Right. And then also cucumber pickles, the faster you work, the faster you get them in the canner, out the canner, then that will help prevent a lot of the mushiness.
Well, there's a tip for you. If you can do pickles in pint jars rather than quart jars, that means less time, less heat, the more opportunity they're going to be more of a crisp pop rather than a okay pickle.
Right, absolutely. So that's another one. And then you want to warm your jars. You might think this step is not necessary, and that's not true. Why is that, Joey?
Because hot plus cold equals broken jar.
And you might think, well, these jars are room temperature. And yes, they are room temperature.
70 degrees.
70 degrees. And boiling water is 212.
212. That shows where you grew up at. 212. And you put those together, and no matter what, it's not a French press, okay? Right. These jars are not tempered to that type of level.
No, they're not tempered glass. It's cute that Joey knows what glass the French press is, because that's how I drink my coffee. So you want to make sure you warm your jars, and then trust your gut. If you're like, something feels off about this recipe, or something feels off about this produce, or how old, the expiration date has worn off of this.
Guessing is not a good solution here.
Like, I think I bought this last year, but I'm not sure. It might have been 2 years ago. And honestly, like, I feel like sometimes for me, like, I've lost some concept of time with the pandemic. Like, not totally, but last year might actually be 2 years ago. So, so sometimes, especially when it's an ingredient that you don't use often, it's better to feel safe and like sure versus being like, I'm not sure. So just keep that in mind. And then I would also highly recommend taking a canning class if you can find one. I don't know if there's online options, but I found them through my local recreation department. And honestly, that information that I only had to drive like 20 minutes to get to the location, but I would have probably driven like over an hour to get that information because it was helpful.
So it's a science. It's okay not to know the answer. That's what we're here for. GardenTalkRadio@gmail.com. There's reliable sources. Now, a word of caution. If you're going to can, again, like you said, Holly, look over everything. If you have questions and you're uncertain, send us an email, gardentalkradio@gmail.com, and we will get you an answer timely as best we can. Do not send us an email and say, I'm in the middle of canning. I need an answer. Can you get me? Because we may not have that availability because we have lives too where we're not sitting in front of the computer 24/7 waiting for people to send us questions about in the middle of their canning situation. I need to know about this. Just telling you, just being real with you.
Right. So trust your gut. So we are brought to you today by our sponsor, Walton's. We know you care about where your food comes from. Canning and preserving your fruits and vegetables is great, but what about the meat? At waltonsinc.com, you can get all the equipment, seasoning, and supplies to make sausage, jerky, and any other meat product your way to your high standards. Do you want to make snack sticks that people will actually like? Walton's creating meatgistics.com, an informational site to help you make the best finished product. You can go to waltonsinc.com. They have a full line of meat grinders, mixers, sausage stuffers, and more to help you go from animal to edible, plus spices, all the good stuff. So if you use code GROW50, that's GROW50, you will save 10% off your orders of $50 or more at waltonsinc.com.
All coupon codes during the program can be found at our parent website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, underneath the Money tab at the top of the page.